Hello everyone, I'm Santiago, and today I'm gonna be testing Crash Bandicoot the Sane Trilogy on the GeForce GTX 1060 3GB for performance monitoring. I'll be using CAM. If you want to download the software, there's a link down in the description. So Crash Bandicoot the Sane Trilogy, I'll be doing 1080p, 1440p and 4K. To skip down those sections of the video, check the timestamps down in the description. So before starting, I need to talk about something very important. If you were with me on the live stream while I was testing this game for the first time, you'll notice that the game was kept at 50 frames per second. Some people had the same problems, but at 20 frames per second or 55, something like that. In the end, it seems like the game just picks the wrong refresh rate and that's it. For some reason, while I connect my capture card, the game thinks that I have a 50Hz monitor or something like that, despite that I choose 60Hz, which means that I had to record without using the capture card. I used NVidia Share, also known as Shadowplay, so while recording there should be like 5 to 7 FPS less. So first of all, I'll show you 1080p twice using the maximum settings, first on the G4560, then on the i3-8100. It doesn't make sense to test two CPUs this time around because this game is GPU bound. It uses very little CPU, and we maintain 60 frames per second on 1080p without a problem. Then I switch to 1440p, and once again using the maximum settings we can maintain 60 frames per second just fine. And finally at 4K I show you two configurations. First of all, I lower everything to the minimum to see what frame rate we get, which in the worst cases is usually into the 40s, but remember that I'm recording, so the recording has an impact in the frame rate, so you should be able to be into the 50s more often than me. And then I just crank up the settings to the max, and I'm trying to be over 30 frames per second that time around. But also keep in mind that at 4K I overclocked the GPU. I was around 2 GHz on the core clock, and I added 400 MHz to the memory clock. So the options menu, the options that gave me the biggest difference in performance, first of all, were shadow resolution. Shadow resolution from ultra to high was already a significant performance difference, so I recommend first lowering it from ultra to high. Then the anti-aliasing option is just FXAA, but I see a small difference in performance with that. And then for some reason with ambient occlusion I didn't see a huge difference in performance, which is kinda weird. That's usually a big performance hit on most games. And then the options I didn't mention, just lower them in groups, but the main one is shadows, then anti-aliasing, and then the rest. And depending on which refresh rate your monitor has, in my case I have a 60Hz monitor, so it says 60 or 30, and the game has a 60 frames per second cap. That was what most people were saying, but some people with high refresh rate monitors found a way to go over the 60 FPS cap, so I don't get why they don't just let us unlock the frame rate or choose the refresh rate of the monitor, so we don't have the issues that the frame rate is kept at 50 frames per second or 20 frames per second. It will make things a lot easier for everyone. Also, it seems to have some false V-Sync, even if I turn off V-Sync. Sometimes you're just running around at 60 and then, I don't know, an effect shows up and it goes down to 30, and a second later it goes up to 60 again. In order to fix that, I just disabled V-Sync in the video control panel, and that was more than enough to maintain a consistent frame rate. Hopefully they release a fix to sort it out and add more options into the options menu. Even on a 1050 Ti I can do 60 frames per second on 1080p on almost the maximum settings. On a 1060 you can even do 1440p max settings just fine at 60 frames per second. So yeah, it seems to be scaling quite well, and to have a reference, all the consoles run at 30 frames per second, so it seems to be scaling very well even on lower end hardware. But yeah guys, that's pretty much it. I hope you keep enjoying the video, thanks for watching, and see you next time.
stop.